All right, so welcome back. So in this video, we're going to go over the tools inside of Photoshop. We're not going to go over all of them because that will be boring and you guys will fall asleep. And then I'll be like, oh my gosh. All right. So another thing too, I do want to tell you guys, it is almost 2 o'clock in the morning. So my voice is cracking and I apologize for that. But, this is the only time that I can do the videos and I have the background noise of family. All right. So, over here on the left side are my tools panel. So I have this first one, which is the move tool. And what happens with the move tool is it's going to allow you to move things around on your background. So for example, if I go and grab a rectangle tool real quick, it should fill this rectangle in with yellow. And I'm going to grab the move tool and I'm going to move this item around. Now, the thing is, that's the purpose of the move tool. Later on, you will see that if you have things on the same layer and things like that, you can accidentally cut stuff out, but we're not worried about that right now. So this is the move tool, and it moves stuff around. Next, I'm going to actually duplicate this. And the way I'm duplicating this is I'm holding down my Option or Alt. So if you're on a PC, it is Alt. If you're on a Mac, like I am, it is Option. I do also want to point out that I am on a Mac, so your screen might look a little different than mine, but it still works the same. Like I know one of the things is your minimize, maximize, and close buttons are on the right side, whereas mine are on the left. So they're very minor things. And if I talk about Option, it is Alt for you. And if I say Command, it is Control for you. I think those are the only two that I can think of right now. I'll try to call them out as I think of them, but sometimes if I forget, just know that if I say Option and you're like, what is she talking about? It is the Alt key for you. Then if I say Command and you're like, whoa, it is the Control key for you. And that's all. That's pretty much it for now. All right. So I have these two items here. And if I wanted to select a piece or select one, I'm going to go down to my next tool, which is the selection tool. Once I click it, right? So all I did was click it. It's going to open up this menu to tell me that I have more stuff. And the way that I know that I have more stuff is down here. There's a little arrow on your tool, and any tools that have these little arrows in the bottom right corner, those mean that there are more tools that are hidden under there. Okay. Even on the move tool, there was another tool, which is the artboard tool. But we'll talk about that when we need it. So the selection tool, because we're going to use this a lot, all I got to do is drag out a selection. So right now it has selected this small portion. And now I'll show you what I was talking about with the move tool. If I grab the move tool now and have this selection, right, it is moving this selection. So this is another very important point. What is happening is I forgot to switch to a different layer. And with Photoshop, you have to tell it what layer you want it to move. So you have to select it to affect it. So what's happening is, if we look at my layers panel right now, I have rectangle copy 1. And if I move that around, that is this rectangle. If I click on the rectangle 1 and move this around, now I'm moving the layer with the rectangle. So very important to know which layer you're on. It's also very important to name your layers. While we're talking about that, nope, we'll name the layers when we get over. But anyway, so I have this selection and I have it over this one that I wanted over. So if I wanted to, move the selection around, if I wanted to like color a certain portion of this, I could, and I could fill in the selection. For instance, if I go up to edit and I go down to, let me make a new layer actually. So I'm going to make a new layer. Okay. And the way that I'm going to make a new layer is I'm going to go to my layers panel over here. I'm going to click on the plus and then it's going to make the layer on top of what layer I had selected. So I had rectangle 1 selected, so it made a new layer on top. So remember, Photoshop, you're dealing with layers, so layers are very important. So now if I want to fill this layer, I'm going to go up here to Edit. I'm going to go to Fill, and I'm going to tell it what I want to fill it with. This dialog box is going to open up. I'm going to click on the drop down arrow, and maybe I'll choose a pattern. So I might choose one of my patterns. It says custom pattern. Maybe I want to fill it up with water. I don't know. Okay, so I might click that, and I'm going to hit OK. And notice now it has filled that selection in with a pattern. I could also fill that selection in with a color. I could also fill that selection in with something in the background. Like if this was a photo and I wanted to do what's called a content aware fill, which we're going to learn about all of that later on. Okay, so but for now, that is how this selection tool works. And notice now I have these scissors that are showing up on my with my arrow. And what this is telling me is that, oh, if you grab this, you're going to cut that photo out of that selection and you're going to move it somewhere else. And I'm okay with that. Okay. And that's all. That's all it did. It cut it out of away from the yellow and it moved it somewhere else. No big deal. It only does that when it's actually on top of something else. All right. So there is your marquee. We also have the lasso. Oh, and also to deselect the selection, because right now it is selected, I could do a couple of things. I could actually add to this selection with, I accidentally clicked on a different tool. Let me go back. I can actually add on to this selection if I had something else that I want to select. So there are a lot of things I can do, but what I want to do is I want to deselect it. So I can either go up here to select, and I can go to deselect, and you'll notice the marching ants go away. So when it is selected, it has those marching ants, which are those dancing around. When it is not selected, if I go up to select and I go to deselect, then the marching ants aren't there anymore. Okay. So that's how you select. That's how you deselect. If I wanted to do something cool with the lasso tool to have like total control of my selection, I would click the lasso tool and I would just make like, I don't know, a heart. Okay. So now I have a specific selection. If I want to use my keyboard to deselect, I can hit either Command if I was on a PC. I'm sorry, Control if I was on a PC, Command being on a Mac, and D, and it will deselect it for me. Okay. Um, and really, let me see. If I wanted to crop this down, I could. But some of these tools we can go over later as we get into them. For now, the marquee tool, that's a good place to start because we're going to start off with selections and masking. But under that marquee tool, you're going to see elliptical marquee, which is rounded. You'll even see these single row marquees, horizontal and vertical, that are in here for you. In the lasso tool, since we went over that, it's also a selection tool. We have the lasso, we have the polygonal lasso tool. And what this one's going to do is it really is going to allow us to make a selection with straight lines, right? They stay straight. And see, so I have this selection, the straight. We can manipulate these. We're going to learn about that later as well. And again, I can hit Command or Control D to deselect it. And then we have our magnetic lasso tool. Used to be my favorite tool. And what it does is if you have enough contrast between the image that you're trying to select and the background, it will do a really good job at all you have to do is drag it and it's going to like magnetically attach itself to the edges of that image, because that contrast is really good. Okay, and I can let it go. And then there you have it. Now another thing too to be aware of, I'm gonna hit Command or Control D. If I decide that I'm going to do this, when I want to close it, so if I decide that I'm going to do this, like make this circle around here, when I go to close it, I need to make sure that I try to get as close as possible. And you see that circle that showed up? That circle that shows up tells me, oh, you are at a point to where you can close it. And now I have a closed path. Because if I didn't wait for the circle and I did something like this, and I thought I had it, and there's no circle, I didn't close it. That's why this is continuing and it's going crazy, because it's like, oh, you didn't close me. And so what I'll have to do is try to find where that circle is and close it, or I'll have to hit the escape key, because now it went a little crazy. There we go. Right there. Okay. So now I've closed it, and that's the craziness that I have created. Okay. All right. So I'm going to deselect that with Control or Command D. So these are all selection tools. Those are what I want to go over in this video. Okay. So we have this other set of selection tools, but we're really not going to, well, we might be able to do some things. Okay, so we have this object selection tool. This one might not work so well, but let's just try it. If I want to select a certain area, I can, and it is going to select it. It's just not going to do as well as it will with a photo. What this is doing now is it's looking at that darker shade of blue and it's trying to make a selection. But with photos, you guys will see how magical it works. But that's the object selection tool that I'm just making you familiar with. Then we have the quick selection tool. I'm going to hit Control Command D. What the quick selection tool will do is it'll go through and try to quickly select those colors of that are related to each other. And it does a really, really good job some of the time, most of the time. So I'm going to hit Command D. And then we have our magic wand tool, which really needs contrast, because if there is not enough contrast, this will not select well for you. But if there is enough contrast, it will. So what you do with this one is you just click. I'm going to zoom in. You guys can see. Okay. So what you do with this one is you just click. And right now it's set to add to. And the way you know that it's set to add to is if I keep clicking, it's adding to my selection. And the way you control that is up here in your menu. I do want to mention that this menu is context sensitive, meaning it changes based off of the tool that you have selected. So in this menu, I have this first option, which means, oh, I'm going to do one selection, and watch, when I select now, everything else deselects because it's just selecting one. But if I tell it this next option is to add to, if I say add to selection, then now when I select the next blue box, it's just going to add to that selection that I have, and I can continue and keep going, and I can continue to add to my selection. The next option, let me hover over it, so is where I can take from the selection. So right now I have all of these selected. If I didn't want this one selected, I can click on it and I can get rid of what I don't want. So that, and then your last one is going to allow us to intersect with the selection. So if I click here, it's showing that intersection of that selection. Oops, hit OK. All right, so that's what they do. I usually try to keep mine on add to selection. And then another thing too is there are a few things. Right now I have it set to contiguous. What that means, it's checked. So it's only going to select the blue in this area. If I, let me deselect real quick. If I uncheck this and I select it, it's going to select all the blues all around this image. Okay, so any blue that have the values that are in the blue that I selected, it's going to select. So that's very, very good for you to know. Let's say you had a picture and it had black in it, and you wanted to grab all of the black of the photo, but not just the ones that were in like maybe his shirt or the object shirt. You wanted to grab all the black all around the photo. So you click on the shirt and And if you have it unchecked, it'll select all of it. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I'm gonna hit Command or Control D to deselect that. And all right, and I think that's actually it for the selection tools that I wanted to go over with you guys in this video. So I will see you in the next video where we'll explore further. We might actually go into selecting and masking stuff out. So I'll talk to you soon. Ta-ta for now.